And welcome to today's live stream. My name is Paul Tobey. Thanks for joining me for another one of these sessions. As always, the Saturday masterclasses would not be anything without your attendance, and I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to spend a little time with us. Today, we're going to be talking about some diminished scale ideas and tricks that you can use to make improvisation easier. Now, there are specific places to place diminished scales. Mostly, I think the concept would be either for half diminished chords, full diminished chords, or dominant 7th flat 9 chords. We're going to talk about those specifically in the context of a tune called Caravan, which is a very famous Duke Ellington composition. And in this session, I'm going to play the tune and apply these diminished scale ideas in the solo section and in the head section, which I've actually arranged. I'm going to put it on your screen right now. It is a 2-page complete arrangement of the head to Caravan, and I'm going to put the link to download it in the chat now, and then pin it to the top of the chat so that you can have access to it throughout the session. Sometimes if everybody goes there at the same time, then it doesn't necessarily work well. It bogs the site down and some people get timeout issues. Not everybody, but some people. It really depends on a couple of factors. And before we get started playing, let's just do a quick sound check. If you can hear me fine, please let me know, hey, Paul, your vocal mic sounds good, good volume. And then I'm going to play a couple of notes on the piano. Let me know if both the piano and the piano mics and the vocal mics are working fine. And while you get back to me on that, let me just say a quick shout out to those of you that showed up early today. Rich and Keith, Allison, Shell, Amadeo, Amoti, nice to see you, all from the master classes, from the private master classes. Good to see always a great turnout from our regulars. Hey, Jean-Pierre from France, nice to see you. Again, Philippe, Thomas, Philippe, and I'm getting some feedback now on the sound. Vocal mic and piano mic are all good. Thank you so much for the feedback. Grab the sheet music while I play the tune. Now, here's what I want you to listen for today. As I play the tune, what we're looking for is the use of diminished chords and scales, but not in such a way where everything sounds washed out. If you overuse diminished scales, they tend to make your playing sound too dissonant for too long. And it can really mess with the ear. So what you're trying to do is play some dissonance, but always resolve it. We talk a lot about those things in these Saturday sessions. And for those of you that have also joined the chat, Paul and Kurt and Ben, nice to see you. Bertrand also. All right, let me play the tune. I'm going to shut off the audio mic so there's not a double hit on that microphone. That's this one. Sometimes there's feedback from the piano on it as well. So I'll shut that off. And I will remove the sheet music from your screen because I cannot scroll it while I'm playing. And let's listen to the arrangement. A couple of choruses of solo or however long I feel like playing. And I really haven't warmed up for this, so let's see what comes out. And a quick shout out to those who've just joined us. Kurt, Dawn, Karen, nice to see you. Jerry, Modi, Bethany, and Rich made me picture a crazy camel race. That was fun. Actually, yeah, you know, it's kind of that sound, right, with the minor harmonic scale ideas. Right, those minor thirds at the end of a harmonic minor scale. It's kind of nice. Gets that sort of Asian, North African sound. Kind of cool. How many of you actually liked the arrangement? Does it sound like something that would be interesting to learn? Because I did take quite a bit of time to write it out. So if you have some feedback about the arrangement, that would be great. I'm going to dive in and talk about, while you're answering that question, I'm going to talk about diminished scales. So I think the best way to do this would be if I were to put up some manuscript. Not that one. Let's see this one. Yeah, I think I can write on that. Yeah, I should be able to. And I just wanted to briefly talk. So let's say we're in the key of A flat, which this tune is in, okay? And then what we want to do is write in the chords for the first little bit. So you got C7, D flat 7, C7, D flat 7. Just going to make sure that you can see that. Okay, yes, you can. All right. So here's the best place to use a diminished scale when you're talking about a C7 with a flat 9. Now, why does the C7 have a flat 9? And the answer is because if you look at the key signature, it's A flat. And so because D flat is a prominent note in an A flat major scale, then you have to use it on the C7 flat 9 chord. It's also in the melody, if you listen to this. So it's a prominent note. So C7 flat 9. And I'm going to talk about how to use the diminished scale on this specifically. And the answer is, if you look at a C7 chord, you got C, E flat, G, and B flat. And then if you continue on from there, you get your flat 9, which is here. And if you take a look at the top 4 notes of that chord, it's a diminished chord, which means that as soon as you have a diminished chord, you can use a diminished scale. So what scale should we use? So the trick to this is if you go from C here to D flat, that starts a diminished scale with what we call the half whole idea. So what you want is a half interval, and then the next interval is a whole interval, which would be E flat, like this. And then a half interval, which would be E natural, like this. And it just goes up the scale from there. So half, whole, half, whole, half, whole, half, whole. And always the last interval is the opposite of the first interval. The first interval is a minor second. The last one is a major second. Notice very carefully that the last interval of a C7 flat 9 chord is the flat 7 to the root. And in the context of C7 flat 9, this is the scale. So what I would recommend is that whenever you get a tune like this that's very modal in nature, a mode simply meaning some type of scale, in this case, a diminished scale. I don't need to write out the whole scale, but I will, just for those of you that need a little clarity. So half, whole, half, and then whole is G flat here, and then A natural, So we have to put a natural on that because it's in the key. Then you've got, oh, sorry, that should be a G natural, my mistake. Let's do that again. So G flat to G natural, and then A natural is the next note, and then B flat, which is part of the key, and then back to C. So one more time. Now, the problem with this is that if you just run that scale over C7, it gets kind of boring. So listen. So you have to mix it up a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about how to do that. So step one, just to recap, step one is that you're looking for the diminished chord. Whoops. You're looking for the diminished chord that represents the flat 9, the 7 flat 9 chord. And that would mean the 3rd, the 5th, the 7th, and the flat 9. And then what you do is you start the scale on the root and then use the half whole diminished scale. And that's basically all there is to it. So what would happen if we did, and I'm not going to talk about the D flat 7 chord right now because let's just switch to G7. So we started with C7, let's go to G7. Now the G7 chord has a different scale. So there's 3 of them. This is the second one. It starts half whole, half whole, half whole, half whole. So one more time. So that's a G7 flat 9. If we go down another 4th, or let's go up from C to F, and that's another half whole scale. So F7, half whole, right? Whole, half, whole, half, whole. So here are our 3 scales. Here's C7. Here's G7. And here's F7. And that's the only 3 there are. There aren't any others because every time you have a minor third, it just goes back and does it again. So for example, this is C diminished, this is E flat diminished. E flat diminished and C diminished is exactly the same scale. So there's really only 3 of them because every time you recycle the minor third, you get the same scale. Let's check in with you in the chat area and make sure that everything makes sense. So Bethany says, yeah, I mean, you're splitting hairs. Key of A flat, but it's also F minor. So yeah, the tune is definitely in F minor, but A flat is the relative major. Thank you. Couple of feedback ideas on the song. Allison said, love the song and the arrangement. Nice. Amy, love the arrangement, would love to purchase it. You don't need to. You can download it for free. So, oh, you mean like the whole thing that I played? That's a transcription. So yeah, maybe if we have enough people that are interested in that. I'm going to play it again a little later on. And it'll be different. So maybe you can think about which one of those you want if we were to do a transcription. Jerry says, love the arrangement, but the walking bass for the improv is intimidating. Well, actually, not really. One of the quick ideas that you can do, and just, I'm going to take this off for a second just so it's not distracting. One of the things that you can do is if you're walking left-hand bass, you can just walk whatever scale or key of the moment you're in. So for example, you'll notice that when I came down from E flat, I'm starting just with the natural 7, flat 7, and then I'm just going down the scale, right? So it evens out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then it starts over again, right? On 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. Right? So if we were to walk down, and those are like little tricks that you learn when you're walking bass lines. Now, you can spell the chord too, E flat 7. All I'm doing is going back and forth from E flat 7 to A flat. Interestingly enough, the scale for both E flat 7 and A flat major is the same scale. So all you have to do is just walk the scale with your left hand or spell the chord. Those two things together would make great left hand ideas. There you go, Jerry. Hope that helps a little bit. I don't see any questions about diminished. Make sure that you've got it completely, because as I progress with today, it's going to get a little more complicated. I think it's fairly straightforward for right now. How many diminished scales are there? 3. The first 2 notes of each scale is a half note, a minor second or a half step, and then whole step. So half step, whole, half whole, half whole. The second 2 notes of it is the flat 9 and the sharp 9. So that's why it makes it nice. It's got that flat 9. That flat 9, sharp 9 sound. All right. The next thing I wanted to talk about very briefly, because I don't want to spend too much time on this, is if you take that scale, and I need to get the pen working. If you take this scale, and like I said, if you play it as is, it gets kind of boring. So what you want to do is you want to turn that scale into some kind of pattern. And the pattern can be really anything as long as you're not playing a scale. So a couple of simple ideas would be to go up 3 and then back 1. That's just one pattern. Another pattern would be to go up 4 and come back 1. Okay, so now obviously you got to wrap your fingers around these things, so you need to figure out what your fingerings are, but I just like 1, 2, 3, and 4, go back to 3, thumb underneath. Now you can go up and come back down as well. Or you can do things like this, where you're playing 2 notes and then jump a 4th from D flat to G flat, like this. Okay? So the whole idea with diminished scales is because they're so even, right? Half whole, half whole, half whole, half whole, half. Sorry. Half whole, half whole, half whole, half whole. Because they're evened out, it makes sense to draw these little patterns in it. And of course, you can come down the scale as well. So that when you're soloing, all you need to do is visualize this scale, but don't play the scale, play patterns. not doing anything but playing a C7 flat 9 diminished scale, even over D flat. Now, yeah, you could go from C to D flat and play like a D flat half whole scale or diminished scale, but you don't need to, just because it's so modal, and D flat is part of the C7 flat 9 chord. So just play the whole thing over C7 flat 9. And it's really just that simple. So what I would recommend is that, of course, if you're going to do this left hand, kind of get that under your fingers. All I'm doing is I'm skipping the one note. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3. You could do it slowly. See if we've got some comments. Not really intimidating, says the professional. It's not. Sorry, but I do not understand how to switch from the C diminished scale to the D flat diminished scale between two consecutive bars. Well, the answer is I said you don't need to. Because D flat is part of the C7 flat 9 scale, you don't need to switch. If you wanted to switch, then you could just switch the scales in the middle like this. C diminished 7th, and then switch to the D flat diminished scale. But listen, it starts to sound a little too much, right? You've got too much diminished scales going on in there. It's almost, and it just messes with the brain too much. It's like, oh my God, in the middle of this, like, and the chords blow by too quickly, I have to switch diminished scales. No, just stick with the C7 flat 9 diminished scale, and that should help a lot. Amy, I hope that answers your question or your comment. Shell says, what's the difference between a diminished scale and an altered dominant scale? I don't know. I mean, altered dominant scale, by the way, is not one specific scale. Altered dominant is not specific enough unless somebody taught you that it was. In my world, and again, you have to understand, I don't necessarily think in these terms all the time. I'm not thinking, oh, I need to put down an altered dominant scale. An altered dominant scale to me means that some of the extensions of the chord 9, 11, and 13 are outside of the key of the moment. So for example, if we are in the key of C and we have a G7 chord, 9, 11, and 13 is part of the scale in the key of C. If we alter one note, or two notes, or even three notes, and put these notes in there, then that's an altered dominant. But so is if you only alter one of those or two of those. That's my version of it. Altered dominant simply means you're altering some of the 9, 11, and 13 extensions outside of the key. So that makes it very different than a diminished scale, because a diminished scale, even though it has altered chords, notes in it, like this is a C7 flat 9 diminished scale. Look, it has an A natural. So this is not an altered note. This is actually in the key, well, actually, if we're in the key of F minor, I suppose it is altered. I think in the context of altered dominant 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is it's like an 8-note scale, just like an altered dominant, so that's the same. It contains a flat 9, a sharp 9. It also contains a sharp 11 and a natural 13. So I guess they're kind of the same. I don't know. Again, when you're soloing, you don't think like that. What you do is you're thinking about catching the diminished scale. It makes it a lot easier than to think, oh, right now I have to play an altered dominant scale. Well, just play diminished and it'll work. Yeah, think about the common notes between the two scales. That's a good idea. Thank you. Starts the same 4 notes, but then goes up in whole tones. No. I don't know which one you're talking about, diminished or altered dominant. That's like a whole tone scale, really. But yeah, I'm not sure we're talking about the same thing at the current moment. Bethany, maybe you could, well, you wrote, the flat 13. Yeah, I mean, it's a natural 13 in the C7 flat 9 scale. It's a natural 13. So again, I'm not sure we're talking about the same thing. So I know there's comments here. I'm just trying to pick up on some of the things you're saying. Okay. So then if we go back to the tune, which is here. What I've done with this fill-in part, this fill, right? So there's no notes outside of C7 here, but it's still part of the diminished scale. And then the second one is still, except for the F, it's still a C7 flat 9 chord. Now the trick to playing this tune is this. You have to hit on 1 in bar 5, you have to hit this C7 chord hard. It's the melody note. Because if you play this up here, now it's easier if you play it higher, right? Like this. It's nicer if you jump down the octave because it's like this ostinato pattern that keeps the rhythm moving forward, especially if you're doing it faster like this. Okay? So try to catch that ostinato pattern if you can. To me, and this is original stuff. Like, you're not going to find that on an album somewhere. I didn't pick it up from somewhere else. I just kind of came up with it. I was just sitting at the piano going, what would sound good between, because you got 2 bars of break, right? It's like if you just did this. It's not as nice if you put in this ostinato pattern to kind of bridge the 2 melody lines. Okay. Then I wanted to talk briefly about 13, 14, 15, bar 15 with the C7 chord. So I'm starting, and these are drop 2 voicings. So all this one is a C minor major 7th chord over B. So it's very dissonant, but then it resolves on the next note. And these are all just minor chords, drop 2 voicings. To a C7, which is the last chord before F minor. So let's do that one more time. Now it's hard to play. So you have to work at it. But if you miss anything, try to remember that the most important thing is rhythm. You guessed it. So just keep the rhythm going. Don't stop in the middle of it because it's just going to sound like this. Keep the rhythm going. Doesn't matter what you play, really. I didn't play it perfectly, but it didn't matter, right? And then when we get into the bridge, so this is C section really, or the bridge section. I recognize that this voicing is a little big for some people. It goes from F all the way to E flat. But the most important thing here is this left-hand walking pace. And I talked about this earlier, where you're starting descending in half tones. Right? And again, you don't have to catch every note because it's the rhythm that matters. And just a 2-5 at the end, which I don't think you can see on your screen. Yes, you can. Perfect. So let's try the bridge again. I think if you just practice the walking bass line without the melody, would be like this. What did I do there? Okay, let's try it again. So the bass line is just a suggestion, but you'll notice that it's all quarter notes, and it just pretty much runs the scale, except for places like this, where it's spelling the chord. So okay. So have fun with the arrangement. I was really thinking about keeping it fairly simple for everyone. I'm not sure if you find it that way, but I think it's definitely fun to learn and is a different arrangement than you've probably heard before. The goal here, of course, is to play it without a rhythm section, just yourself at piano, and make the whole thing swing. Let's check in with you again and see if there's any other questions. Allison says she thinks the tutorial is spot on. Not too hard, not too easy. Yeah, I agree. Oh, I see. There's a question there. It says, is this tutorial too hard, too easy, or just right? That's Nancy. Hey, Nancy. I didn't know you were listening today, so I thought you had some things to do. But anyway, thank you for posting that question. And for those of you that want to get a shout out to Nancy, she's there online right now, being jazzmental. All right, let's play it. What else did I want to talk about? There was one other thing. I'm just thinking. So what I wanted to do was give you some left-hand voicings that would work for dominant seventh chords or diminished chords. So if we were to look at, and I'm going to take the sheet music off the screen so it's not distracting. So eyes on the piano, we've got, this is our diminished chord. So this is C diminished. It's part of the C diminished scale containing a flat 9 and a sharp 9. Now, if you voice the left hand in fourths, we've talked about fourths before because fourths is a more modern sound versus this type of sound. Listen to the difference that fourths makes. You get this kind of sound because you have a tritone there and then a perfect fourth. And then if you go up in minor thirds, it's still part of the C diminished scale. So this is a great way to voice dominant seventh chords with flat 9. Just use this pattern where you're starting on the flat 9, play a tritone and then a perfect fourth. And then the same thing on E, play a tritone and a perfect fourth. Then the same thing on G, tritone, perfect fourth. And then the same thing on B flat, tritone and perfect fourth, right? So here we go. And it's a really cool sound. Listen to this. Cool, right? Like it bites for sure. And then what happens here is I'm sidestepping a little bit like this or down. So here are the chords, and then you can sidestep those. Wonderful. So have some fun with that. That's definitely a good idea. The other thing, one more thing that I just thought of, and that is this left hand. So I did talk briefly about it. I think the thing that makes the arrangement work really well is the fact that, and I just need to find myself the right screen here, is the fact that the left hand is playing in places where the right hand isn't. So the left hand is 1, 2, and then the right hand is the and of 2. And then when you get into the solo section, you can do other things like this. So play around with that left-hand bass a little bit. I've written it out on 1, 2, and then 4, but you can, as long as it's swing, which of course is the most important thing, the swing rhythm, as long as it keeps that rhythm going, anything you play will work. And all I'm doing there is just playing 1 and 5. actually, if you analyzed it like we've done so far, and you go back and you re-listen to this tutorial, you'll see that it's not that complicated. There are only 3 diminished scales, and once you learn them, here's the first one. Here's the second one. Here's the third one. Nope. And once you learn them in the context of the tune that you're playing in, for example, we're really only using the C diminished scale. We're not using all 3 of them. So you can use them in moderation as long as you're matching the flat 9 chord that it goes with. Okay. Allison says, last question. Yeah, we'll see. Recognizing other songs or chord progressions where diminished scale works. Another like Night in Tunisia, it's kind of like that same sound. So my suggestion for this is like E flat to D minor, 7 to D minor. What I would do is an E flat 7 flat 9 chord. It's the same diminished scale as C7. So if you played E flat, and then when you get to D minor, you can just play D minor scale, right? Let's do this again. Okay, so there's lots of tunes that have these little sort of modes or vamps in them. In Your Own Sweet Way has a bridge. And then it does this modal thing on A flat. Just like stay on A flat 7. And so what you want to do is you want to use an A flat 7 flat 9 chord with an A natural. And so your scale would be again. This is the scale. And then it gets back to the tune. Right? So anytime you see a pedal note that's a dominant 7th chord or any sort of modal section, you can probably find a good use for the diminished scale. Thank you for the question. All right, let's play the tune one more time. It's currently 9 minutes to the hour. It'll give me a chance to play it one more time to see if we get a better version of it. And again, listen for all of the concepts that we've talked about today. Rich, smoking hot version. Nice. Jerry, how do you know that the whole half scale will work over the tune when there are no flat 9 chords specifically indicated in the arrangement? Because, and I talked briefly about this before, if you take a look at the melody is this. That in and of itself, just going to the D flat, is part of the key of F minor or A flat major. Right? If you look at an F bebop scale, but because we're in F minor, right? You've got A flat, D flat, E flat, whatever, because C7, it doesn't have to indicate a flat 9. It's implied because it's part of the key. Right? I hope that answers that question. It's implied. Allison, love the playing, energizing, definitely good daytime jazz. Thank you. Sorry for those in a different time zone. This is kind of like I heard you coming in and out of the diminished scale. Yeah, okay. Thank you. So cool. Thank you for the lesson. You're welcome, Terry. My pleasure. So Wissam way back when says, can you do it slowly? You mean the tune? I could play the tune slowly. Sure. Actually, let me put the sheet music on for me so I remember what it is. Really slowly? Not sure if that's slow enough for you, Wissam, but or Wissam. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce your name. Maybe you could phonetically pronounce it in the chat area. I hope that makes sense. Slowly, definitely fitting the notes together is always a good idea. It is fun to play it slowly as well. If you, well, Alison has a comment. I think you can slow down YouTube videos somehow to review and learn. Yeah, I think you can do that as well. And Wissam says, thanks. You're very welcome. Are there any other questions about diminished scales? Did you get the idea behind them? I know that the basic title of the video is Diminished Scale Tricks That Make Caravan Sound Insanely Cool. And yes, it does sound insanely cool when you play it like this, I think, if you actually listen to the recording. But also, I just want to make sure that you understand that there are only 3 of them and the context and where to use them and how simple it is to use them. Do we all get that? Can I just get a shout out from the chat area saying, hey, Paul, I totally get it. That would really help me and make my day that I managed to explain it as clearly as possible. Jerry says, I understand now. I forgot about the key signature. That makes sense. Yeah, so when we're talking about why C7 flat 9, it's there because of the key signature, which makes sense. Thank you. Keith says, to slow down YouTube vids, click on the gear to adjust the speed. There you go. Allison gets it, says, yep, 3 scales, perfect. All right. So the sheet music is still pinned to the top of the chat area. If you haven't had a chance to download it, please go and do that. I am going to remove it momentarily because I like to keep these sessions intimate and make sure that people understand if you want the sheet music, you have to show up for them. And so we're trying to increase the participation numbers. Let's take a look and see how many we've had so far today. So 222 people so far today. Typically, only about half of them download the sheet music, which is about 100 people. And that means that for many people, they either can't read sheet music, or it's too complicated, or they just, for some reason, don't bother. So hope you got it and have some fun practicing it. Allison says, Nancy, what are those crowns about? Is that jazmental? Very cool. Just got one today for the first time. Yeah, I don't know. Nancy knows. Maybe Nancy can answer that. Jerry says, I would like a transcription of the first version. It's more accessible for my technique. Okay. All right. Well, I'll listen to it back, make sure that it's up to speed and that it's on par with what we like to put out as transcriptions, and I will definitely review it. Nancy says, yeah, that's YouTube. Nice. Okay. So that pretty much does it for me here from Niagara-on-the-Lake. I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer day, for those of you that are in the northern hemisphere anyway. For those of you that are like in Australia and it's the middle of the night, I hope your winter is going well. Or places in South America, you get the idea. I had fun today. Night in Tunisia, Caravan, which is Duke Ellington, is definitely something that people play at jam sessions. I recommend you download the sheet music and learn it. And thanks for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. I will see you next week, same time, same place, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And thanks. I'm Paul Tobey. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care.